Welcome everybody. My name is Jos Voskel, and today I'm having an interesting discussion about systems of record and systems of engagement with MG Smith and Andre Wegner and Oleg Shilovitsky, both, I would say, representing a system of engagement. And first of all, let's start with a short introduction of each of the participants and the system that they are mostly familiar with. MG, can I start with you?
Sure. My name is MJ Smith. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of Colab Software. Before joining Colab, I also worked agency side in B2B SaaS, and before that spent 6 years in mostly hardware product management and marketing roles inside of a company called Halma PLC, which is a multinational industrial conglomerate focused on environmental safety and life-saving technologies, manufacturing. In terms of what Colab does, we are focused primarily on complex design review, especially when multiple people have to get together to make a design decision. So you can imagine things like a detailed design review during new product development, or a value analysis and value engineering event, or design for manufacturability. We're focused on maximizing the amount of useful feedback that every participant can provide in a design review based on their technical expertise, and also making that feedback as usable as possible in terms of issue tracking and implementing the feedbacks into the end design.
Okay, I understood that design reviews are always complex because you're dealing with people with different viewpoints, and of course it's about real-time collaboration, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So the real-time aspect is important because when you don't have real time, what happens is people cannot respond to each other's feedback as dynamically. And so you get a lot of duplication of the people giving the same feedback twice, or you get feedback that contradicts one another, and ultimately that really impacts the usability. And the complexity piece is huge, right? Like, a lot of the technologies available are very, they only allow people to do design reviews in sequence. And as the complexity of a review increases, the fact that you have to, check something out, mark it up, check it back in, then have the next person check it out, mark it up, check it back in, just adds so much time and frustration to that process.
Okay, that sounds familiar. Andre, can you introduce yourself and what is Authentise, if I say it correctly?
Yeah, so I'm Andre. I run Authentise. I founded it 11 years ago, and we're in the we've been in the manufacturing software space since, always connected to workflows. So we started out in workflows to manage more the production end of manufacturing. So that's from order to shipment through sort of an extended system that one could bunch in with MES tools. And recently we released a collaboration tool for the engineering and R&D timeframe that I'll be talking about today mostly, and is really focused on helping these ad hoc conversations that often happen in engineering happen fluently. So we're excited about participating in this system of engagement realm that you just spoke about, Jos.
Okay. And those collaboration activities, are they within a company, or are they also between design or R&D partners at different locations?
There's lots of different types of ad hoc conversations that can go on, of course, and specifically here we can focus on the engineering R&D phase, and in that phase, obviously you might be talking inside of your team with different experts, the domain experts, but you might also be talking to suppliers, you might also be talking to your customers, you might also be talking to testing houses. So there's all different types of conversations that are going on. But what was important for me and for the team coming up with this new product is that we're realizing that these conversations are really ad hoc. So there's in the process of designing a new product or a new assembly or even a new individual object, there are lots of different types of threads that go on. So conversations that have a particular outcome, usually quite short-lived, but they are kind of bunch up. At the moment, they happen in 2 or 3 meetings or several email exchanges. But that's really the contextual knowledge that leads to the outcome that is then fed into the system that we see on the shop floors. So for us, it was important to understand there's diversity in terms of the group that might come together, but also in terms of the different types of conversations that might happen at any given moment.
Okay, clear, interesting. And Last and not least, Oleg, we know each other for a long time. What about your introduction and OpenBOM?
Yes, thank you, Jos. So my name is Oleg Shilovitsky. I'm CEO, co-founder of OpenBOM. Before OpenBOM, I worked for Autodesk, where I was managing PDM and PLM development. And before Autodesk, I had another startup. And before that, Jos and myself worked for the SO system with a company called Smartin. So yes, we have long history. Let me speak about OpenBOM. At OpenBOM, we focus on how to help engineers and manufacturing companies, suppliers and contractors to work with accurate data and help them to develop product faster. So what we realize that data is a central piece of everything that happens around engineering and manufacturing. But this data can be not organized well. For example, use Excels, or this data can be distributed in different systems. For example, PLM, ERP, or some other systems. So in both situations, the problem is that people that need to make decisions better do decisions with the right data. And those decisions will be better, and help them to make the right decisions at the right time. And we recognize this trend that is going from very small companies when people are just doing everything in Excel to very large companies when people are saying, I don't have this information because it's an ERP system, it's not available. So what we build at OpenBOM, we build a platform that can optimize this data and organization of data, provide access to this data, and help people to communicate, also collaborate. So one of the ways of collaborate that I've learned before OpenBOM is just to pull data in the Google spreadsheet and share it between everyone, which works very easy, and the people love it. The problem is the data is not accurate. So what we did at OpenBOM, we provided in many ways very seamless organization of data, very similar to spreadsheets, but helping to people to get connected and this data in real time updated, and people can get access to this, making changes. And by doing this, they just making their decisions faster and easier. So we help a lot of small and medium-sized companies, and we also starting to help to enterprises where we mostly focusing on new product development. And the goal is the same, help them to work faster, collaborate, work with the right data, and make right decisions.
Oleg, thanks for your point. And I was expecting you were starting to mention also BOM collaboration. So we have BOM collaboration, design collaboration, and we have task collaboration. You're all, I think, focusing on collaboration and real-time collaboration, correct?
Most of people kind of use BOM terminology because it's easier for many of them. Although sometimes people like to use different terminology. So we are not necessarily religious about what terminology you will be using. And we are focusing on data. And yes, bill of materials, it's something that speaks to many people in the way they communicate. Some people saying BOM is the lifeblood of manufacturing because without this, you will not be able to do anything. But I think today it's mostly, sometimes BOM word is confusing. And people are starting to talk about like what is the data, and actually it represents the BOM, or it represents product structure, or represent some other pieces of data. So we are, in general, as much as Google allows us staying away from the religious discussions of if this, we need to call it BOM, or we need to call it product structure, or we need to call it digital twin, or something else, But it's about data. It's about people getting in front of them access to what they need. And in many ways, in many situations, it's called bill of materials.
Yeah, so we all agree it's about data. MG, what is data in Colab's content? What is the real-time data that you are sharing?
Yeah, so Colab accesses data from the PLM system. And what we want to do is make it particularly useful for what we refer to as a human-to-human interaction, as opposed to for a human-to-data interaction. So if you think of a markup, which is something that can happen within the PLM tools available to you, you might conduct a markup as part of an ECN process, right? We would consider that a human to data interaction, right? The person checks out the file, they mark it up, they check it back in, and then they circulate it to the rest of their organization to show what has changed in ECN. What often happens in these complex design reviews I was talking about before is not just a human to data interaction, but a human to human interaction, or a human to human to human to human interaction. If you have 4 people, they're not just interacting with the CAD to make decisions, they're interacting with each other and playing off of each other's technical expertise. So Colab accesses the data from PLM, but presents it in a visual, compelling way that allows people to get the real-time feedback and see not just the data, but the feedback from the other people in the conversations, populating in real time and in a very clean interface. And that's really important for maximizing engagement, right back to this topic of systems of engagement, to get the most useful feedback from the people, but also have that represented and tied back into the data.
And Andre, in threads, so where is the data and where is the interaction maybe with PLM?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's data that we're not currently capturing. And MJ just talked about some of that data, the conversations that are going on, and that type of data gets lost a lot in the conversations that we're having offline in meetings or in emails and so forth. But it's also all the other data, that all the conversations that are happening that are basically us deciding on the material selection, the manufacturing selection, all the stakeholder engagements that we have, and all of that communicates intent. And from my perspective, losing that data is detrimental, because as a result, we're left with only one thing, which is the design. And the design is a really terrible way of communicating what we were trying to do. And as a result of only communicating in the form of design, we are really struggling in introducing new materials or new machines to manufacturing, because we don't know what people were trying to accomplish earlier, and we have to redesign the part with insufficient information. So basically we have to start from scratch. So one sector that you've seen be impacted by this very, very dramatically is the additive industry, right? It can't redesign the parts that it needs to redesign to be able to take advantage of this new process fast enough, because it doesn't have all the background data that was used to design those parts in the first place. So from my perspective, it's all about the data that we're not capturing, that we should be capturing in a structured way. So it's unstructured data that needs to become structured. And that's what the interest of Threads, our main product, is.
And Oleg, what is the meaning of unstructured data for you with OpenBOM?
Well, I think it's a great question. Our questions about data actually, starting to think about the transformation that we are going through. So first of all, what we realize that today, most of information flows or most of workflows, they're very document driven. So it's traditionally, I have a CAD file and I want to send it to someone, or I have an Excel and I want to send it to someone. So that's how most of workflows in engineering and manufacturing are happening even today for most of companies, and it's very natural, and it's a part of the paradigm that many people develop. Like, it's very easy to think, okay, let's drop it in Excel, send it to someone. So, but this is also the root cause of inefficiency, because in the digital environment, operating with documents, first of all, create a lot of inefficiency and accuracy, because people are exchanging those documents in a very sporadic way, and a lot of people just leave in not updated pieces of information. So the first element of data for us is just be able to bring data to the data-driven world. So let's start thinking how to capture data, organize it, and help people to communicate with this data. So that's the first element.
So here, sorry to interrupt. Here I hear the structured way of data, right? Because we were talking about structured and unstructured data.
That's true. Absolutely true. But there is a second element in this, because as we move to more complex information flows, we see that there are existing systems, and this is a system of records. Those systems are expensive. Companies spend a lot of time into this. they're responsible for some business processes. So it's unrealistic to think that people will be changing them or, replacing them, because it's just from the reality standpoint, it's not going to happen. I talked to one of the large companies, and they say, "You have PLM." I don't want to say what name, but one of those four. And they say, "But replace it, $10 million. No one will ever do it. But on the other side, we'll have a lot of inefficiency going between the systems." So for us, the next one, if you want to call them the next level of structured information flow, is just to capture communication and to capture analysis that can be presented to people to make their decision faster and make this decision easier. So by presenting data from multiple systems, aggregating this data, providing analysis of this data over time, can present some trend that can help people to make decisions.
Although when I hear the story of the expensive system of records, I mean, the historical system of records were, of course, to consolidate data. They were never meant to store collaboration discussions, etc. I mean, that would be too much overhead, too difficult. And I think that's exactly the power of the type of system of engagement. They are really fulfilling an actual need, not necessarily a need in 5 years later. And the systems of record, they contain the legacy, and most manufacturing companies, they have a huge legacy to maintain. And maybe that brings us to the point, how do you see your product work in an environment with an established PLM? MG, do you have the experience with that, with customers that have a traditional system of record PLM backbone and they need Colab on top of that, and why?
Yeah, so I would say 80% of Colab's customers do have a PLM or at least a PDM in place. And I don't think that's going to go away. I think it is important to have an associative database of product data that different systems of engagement can access, right, and surface the right data in the right way. But in order to surface the right data, you need all of those associative connections that exist in that database that these companies have spent lots of money and years to put into place. Like it's not, you can't get the right data, it's difficult to get the right data without those systems in place. So I don't think they're going away. Colab's customers continue to use their PLM systems as that underlying associative database. Colab will then access the CAD data. So a person would actually start the review process from their PLM. They would share CAD files, a bill of materials to Colab, and then the review where people are engaging with other people in conversation around this CAD and providing feedback, that would take place in Colab. And then ultimately what Colab's going to do is automatically organize all of that feedback into a list of action items. I think one of the biggest problems is you get feedback in this unstructured format that we've been talking about, and then it gets lost and never turned into action. So you have like ghost action item lists and ghost issue lists. And so a lot of companies talk about issue tracking as a big problem. So you get that issue list, and then somebody can go, probably a CAD designer, open up their CAD tool. So this is also obviously an established tool in organizations. Sometimes they have multiple CAD tools floating around, but they'll have Colab on one screen with the issue tracking, and they'll have their CAD tool on the other screen. They'll go through, they'll resolve the issue, and they will ultimately check that file back into PLM to close the data loop.
Right. So here I hear a lot of stuff that Threads is also doing, Andre, correct? The issue tracking,
Yeah. I think that a lot of system of engagements will have some overlap and be expert at other at other concepts. So our main priority is to organize that unstructured data into some semblance of structure. So we have the collaboration together with an ongoing sort of ad hoc process engineering aspect. But we don't do any 3D annotation. Like, that's not our job. So we would work together with Colab to do that. So there's overlap in terms of that's what system of engagements do. They organize the conversation, right? All of us do that to a certain extent. But then each of us does a slightly different thing. And what's interesting about this conversation, I know we're only focusing on PLM here, but that's exactly what's going to be happening in other areas of the design process. You're seeing it happen in CAD, right? In CAD, you have a monolithic system that is not fit for purpose for that engagement, or maybe not fit for purpose for specific functional items in that tool chain. So we're also seeing some splintering apart of those solutions. It's going to be a very interesting decade for us to find a way to actually figure out how all these systems of engagement should work together, right? And because that's not a very defined space at the moment. And from my perspective, we're just at the beginning of that journey.
And Oleg, is OpenBOM complementary to traditional PLM, or are you filling in the space of people that don't use any PLM at the moment?
We are in both spaces. So the philosophy of OpenBOM and the architecture of OpenBOM is to integrate with any system, because one of the inefficiencies is the capturing data between systems and doing some work. So that's why OpenBOM is integrated with all CAD systems and also integrated with PDM, PLM, and ERP systems. So the way we see ourselves, and this is what our customers do, they capturing this data and they build a contextual collaboration layer that they can work with this. And if this contextual layer of bill of materials for ordering, it's fine. This contextual layer is to build bill of materials for change, collaborate with multiple people, and then return it to PLM system. It's also fine. And there is a third thing, that OpenBOM can capture information from multiple systems and establish connections between them, semantic connections that doesn't exist. They exist in people's mind, but they do not exist in the systems and cannot be used for analytics. So those are kind of contextual layers that OpenBOM can build to help people to operate more efficiently. And I totally agree with the both of you saying, like, this system of engagement will start to form a layer where those systems will start connecting together and will start complement each other. Exactly like we see many collaboration systems complement each other today in the business space. Like Jira is complementing Slack, and Slack work efficiently with some other systems in our development work. The same things will start happening in the product development space. And I can see how, for example, Colab will be together with OpenBOM, and we do not do design reviews, but we can manage files and we can connect with other systems as well. So we can bring this level of collaboration for people that don't have it. And those things that, like managing of workflow and conversation about intent of change that Andrew, you mentioned as well. Those things can be integrated. And in my view, it will not be predefined upfront by us. It will be made by many people in the industry and organizations, because the openness of system of engagement is the level up from existing system of records. And people will be using APIs, and people will be using different ways to communicate and collaborate between those systems. That, exactly like today, someone is saying, can you send message to Slack? Yes, we can. But someone want to say, like, I want to capture some design intent, or I want to capture some information from design discussion and bring it in. Yes, that's also possible. So I see a lot of communication and improvement in the digital workflow that will happen.
So just if you look at the slide behind me, it's a part of Mark Halperin's famous picture of also explaining from the coordinated way of working, the old way of working, to the connected way of working. And one of the statements that Mark once made from Gartner is that PLM systems don't reduce time to market so much, because there is so much delay in the interaction between all the partners, the suppliers, and that's exactly the area where the systems of engagement are now focusing, I think, on real-time collaboration with partners, with suppliers. And for that, I think theoretically we say it's beautiful. But now let's see, MJ, do we have any numbers or any benefits that we can see from customers? Do you have any feedback that they say we can do things 2 times faster? What are the major benefits of Colab for your customers?
Yeah, so PLM is quite structured, right? And we've talked a lot about these unstructured data or the unstructured conversations. And I think the risk is if you, in moving from structured or unstructured to structured, there are many benefits, right? Chief among them might be traceability. And a lot of manufacturing companies are quite focused on traceability, so you can go back and see why a decision was made in the past. The challenge or the risk is if you go from unstructured to structured and you lose the usability, or you lose the ability to have like a free-flowing discussion in that transition from unstructured to structured, then people will not use it. And then you don't get the benefit of all the information that is locked up in someone's head, right? So as an example, when I used to work in a hardware product management role, I worked in a pH sensor company, water quality sensors, and big OEMs of water treatment systems would work with us as the supplier. And our engineers had deep specific knowledge about what would make the pH sensor not work in their application. And the OEMs that effectively tapped into our supplier expertise had much better outcomes for their products. And the ones that either didn't get the right information out of us or didn't implement it into their product had challenges when they launched that product to market. So for example, a pH sensor will expire after a year because it is based on chemistry that just degrades over time. Some OEMs just ignored that, right? Our design engineers would try to tell them this, and you should design so that it can be changed out in the field. And ultimately those products would start getting erratic, right, after 1 year in the field if you didn't design to that specification. But that's the type of thing you need to draw out of a supplier. You need to turn them into a partner, and you need to do that early in product development, because if you don't, on the back end of product development, you are losing months, right? Because you're going to have to make a late stage change that is a lot more painful and a lot more impactful. So when we talk about the ability to impact revenue and impact time to market, it's about bringing risk forward in stage gate. And a lot of Colab's customers are bringing suppliers in years earlier than they otherwise would be able to, because we are allowing some of those more free-form discussions to take place while leveraging the useful and contextual data that PLM can provide if accessed correctly.
Right. And as you're part of marketing, you must have some numbers.
Yeah, sure. So one of our customers, Mainspring Energy, they completely redesigned their product enclosure. It's a power generator, a linear generator. Completely redesigning enclosure took 50% cost out of that product enclosure. And normally their senior director of hardware said that kind of design review process and implementation would take 12 months. And they did that whole process in 6 months. So their design review cycle on that was twice as fast, but also obviously quite effective if they were able to take 50% cost out.
Right. So here we clearly see the time factor and the impact it has of real-time collaboration. Andre, are you already that far with threads on customer benefits?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously wouldn't launch a product that hasn't been validated. We're very early in our journey. We only released, I think, 6 weeks ago or so. But some of the early explorations, one at a medical company, medical device company, they started using for 2 weeks, and they now captured what was just one-on-one conversations or maybe a meeting, lots of emails they captured in these threads, and they managed to capture like 100% of that contextual data and in that time they saved 150 hours. Within 2 weeks they'd achieved 1.5x ROI on the product. So that's a fairly significant saving. We're now going to be doing longer benefit studies, of course. So this is just a very small one. But from my perspective, already a massive validation for what threads can do.
And Oleg, your real-time collaboration between the suppliers around the BOM, etc.
Yes, it's actually, I like very much the slide, and in the past we had a lot of conversation with Mark about the green line, the revenue line. So what we found at OpenBOM is placing ourselves on the money line, on the revenue line in organization is extremely important to organization to understand what value it brings. I mean, not saying anything wrong about BOM collaboration, but engineers sometimes like to be involved in the hard work. So by removing this hard work from them, they feel like disappointed. We've been working hard. Now we should not. But the point is that when we come to organizations with OpenBOM, we help them to connect the people and the departments that as a result will optimize performance and save money or save time that can be measured. And for example, connecting engineering and ordering system, even in a small company, can end up with reducing of up to 30% inventory cost. And we have this example. I'm just looking in the last stories on the OpenBOM website, and I can see that, for example, one of our customers reduce 20% more, become 20% more efficient to reduce inventory errors, cost, and mistakes of working with suppliers. And another company just saved 2 hours of engineering work every day by using the system because of not communicating. And we have a lot of these stories. So ultimately, by decreasing loops and improving data accuracy, companies are saving money. But I also want to highlight the same point that MJ said. It is taking operations that traditionally made later and bringing them forward. So this is the switch from waterfall to agile because of collaboration and the way to communicate and seamless data extraction. OpenBOM allows to inventory management and to procurement to start acting earlier, much earlier, and ordering right components at the right time, saving a lot of money. So those examples are all over with our customers. So the real numbers, it's a double digit of percentage of saving inventory cost and removing of hours of work of engineer trying to figure out what information was sent to whom and when. Just a lot of involvements. But the key to show it to organization is to show them how they save money. So when you come to management of operation and say yesterday you ordered wrong parts and spend money that go to trash, that's the most convincing thing that you can do to someone to sell a system. So it goes directly to sales.
I think I'm fully in line with you. I think also the new ways of working, they have the double-digit benefits. Otherwise, it's just an efficiency gain if you keep on doing it the same way. And this brings me to the last aspect of this discussion. What about the culture? The culture of a company, the culture of your customers. What are the type of companies that embrace systems of engagement, and what kind of companies hate systems of engagement? MG, starting with you again.
I think that you would be surprised. Some of the biggest enterprises in the world are embracing systems of engagement. So Colab, we work with Ford Pro. That's their utility vehicle division. And they were an early adopter because they work with a network of converters that take those base model vehicles and they transform them into a vehicle for a specific utility. So a plumbing van or a wheelchair transportation van or an ambulance, right? And because of that, any change to the base model vehicle is going to impact, how those converters do their builds down the line. So the communication has to be really tight. And they saw this day in and day out in their business. So, I think the natural inclination might be to say small and medium-sized businesses are always going to be the early adopters. But there are divisions within these huge enterprises that are actually leading the way. And I think you can actually see significant cultural differences between different divisions across an enterprise. And so I think when it comes to enterprise adoption of systems of engagement, there are going to be divisions that operate quite entrepreneurially and drive the benefits of adopting systems of engagement. And the rest of the enterprise is going to see that and they're going to want to follow suit because there's real proof and evidence that this kind of thing works.
And Andre, for threats, is it depending on the size of the company?
Yeah, I would second the thought that MJ made. I think with the way we think about it is think about types of people we want to talk to, and types of people we don't want to talk to, and that differs. It doesn't matter whether those people are within large or small organizations. The customer profile that we head after are engineers that are running or working in small teams of people solving specific discrete challenges. And they often work relatively isolated from the main core of the business, as MJ just described with for Pro, but need to have collaboration with a wide range of stakeholders. I think the cultural shift comes in when you're talking to the IT groups and people who aren't really that involved on the engineering side, and they're just there to provide the tools. And obviously for them, this kind of plethora of new tools that is being opened up by this system of engagement approach is difficult to stomach. So you see some cultural challenges at the larger enterprises in the wrong departments, but that generally means you're talking to the wrong departments. If you can price, market, and approach the right people with the right things, then I think that you're not going to have that many challenges dealing with those types of people, and you can sell your product to any size company.
And Oleg, what about your customers? How important is culture?
Well, culture is obviously part of any organization, and any change always will be hard to people. So you cannot ignore this. But what we have learned by working also with the small companies and large companies, that there is no one answer to solve this problem of how to manage change and how to convince people to work with systems. I think it's different, and it depends on people, and it depends what they value from the system. If you speak about inventory and you speak about ordering, you need to speak about the mistakes that made. And if you speak with engineers, you need to speak about how you make their work easier. And the system should support these activities. And we learned in small companies that they're providing seamless integrations and easy user experience, people like. And in large organization, people also appreciate the way they can stay connected and get information faster. So we have large Fortune 500 enterprises like Beckman Medical just working with OpenBOM because they realize this is a much easier and much simpler way to collaborate and handle data that's stored and managed in other systems. And we also learned from small companies that by establishing communication between engineering and procurement, they save time and money, but we connect to their CAD and save tons of times, so they like it. So I think it just needs to be crafted and supported by user experience and the problems you are solving. But every organization has this kind of barrier that you need to cross, and depends on organization, depends on people, you need to cross it differently. But I think we see the generation of people that are growing and looking at this completely different from what I've seen at least 10, 15 years ago. So,
but when I hear, but when I hear you talk about working more efficient, then you don't work different. I think, and I think the big change of system and engagement is also that you have this early collaboration. Don't wait till my part is ready, but you already have visibility of what is happening, and that's a big culture change. Yeah.
You can work efficiently because you have a tool. If everything you have at a hammer, then problems will be nails. But if you bring a tool that can help people to communicate, extract data, collaborate, bring the place where they can capture intent, all the things that we've been just talking about, you can bring those systems, then they can be more efficient. Otherwise, they will tell, okay, get it in Excel, send it to someone. So that's because, yeah.
Good. I think we are almost done with our discussion. Now, if I listen to the three of you, if I buy all the three systems, they are relative cheap, or I rent them, they are software as a service. Can I do a full enterprise with your systems? And maybe I start again with MG, and then you can make your closing statement.
Sure. Yeah. So our approach is, well, I think actually one of the inherent benefits of a system of engagement is that you can implement it at the division level. And because of that, you don't, I think a lot of companies shy away from implementing any software at all, because the nature of PLM is such that you need to roll it out across a huge chunk of the enterprise to start seeing value. And so that can take years, especially to drive the adoption. On the flip side, with Colab, you could implement it in a division, right? We've implemented it in Ford Pro, and the time to value becomes months or even weeks as opposed to years. And so in terms of our approach to driving enterprise value, it is, let's get a specific use case, whether that's design for manufacturability or collaborating with customers or value analysis, value engineering events, up and running with a division, let's call it 50 to 100 engineers, and let's show that we can drive 7 figures of impact in 6 months. And then the rest of the enterprise will want access to this too, right? And so I think transforming the way we work, to your point, it's no small feat. And I think actually the best way to do it is to take it in steps where each step drives a huge incremental business value.
Thank you. Andre, your final pitch?
Yeah, I've enjoyed this conversation, and partially because we all agree on some of the main elements. I think, just to add to the conversation, I think what we're going to see is a significant increase in the system availability and use of systems of engagement over the next few years, and that's not only because the systems of records which large companies have used traditionally in place of kind of an engagement model are not fit for purpose or not fit for this purpose, but also because the general trend in software as a whole is towards unbundling of big monolithic systems to individual constituents. And so I'm excited to see what mixture of constituents is going to be important for the organizations we all serve together. Ultimately, I'm most enthused, driven by the vision of engineering in the future, which really, I think what we're all working towards is compacting the time it takes to turn an idea into a part from what is now years, maybe even a decade, to 2 seconds, right? And ultimately, a lot of the changes that are happening in aligned industries, like what we're seeing in large language models at the moment, will play a role in that. And so we're going to see a very dynamic system of engagement market that's adopting changes from the outside, helping convince people on the inside that these new ways of working are important, and all of us together contributing to that ultimate goal.
Thanks. Oleg.
Well, first of all, I think we're finding amazing agreement, and yes, you've been driving with the high level of mastery, everyone to agree. But I think what is behind that, what I see is the fundamental shift, is that we see how the industry and the PLM industry is shifting. Also, not only PLM, but also other software and enterprise, shifting from applications to focus on data and services. So it's what companies are less focused on what systems they will use, but more focusing how they can get their work done. And when you see in enterprise these big giant piles of systems of records that there, I think the system of engagement is filling those gaps and helping people to do the work much easier and capture the data that was lost, and helping them to perform actions that they had no chance to perform before. From a standpoint of adoption, it's more about how to give to people an opportunity to start using it fast. And in larger companies, it's obviously requires some IT and requires some work, but it's much easier today than it was before. And with a lot of experience in medium-sized companies, like you can start using OpenBOM in 5 minutes. Like you will not be doing a lot, but you will be just up and running. And this is the modern generation of systems. Like a system is not something that needs to be installed. It's where is this URL to start using the system. And I think that drives the speed, and drives the change, and everything is becoming easier and connected. Not necessarily not needed a planning. Again, it would be a separate topic to discuss, I hope. about education, but you can start quick and you can start adopting system first.
Okay. Well, thank you all for this interesting discussion around systems of engagement. I think, indeed, a trend that is coming and probably is growing based on data. We haven't talked about model-based. We talked about data mainly. And again, thank you for your contribution. I think I learned again a lot, and I will share it with all of you later, also in my blog post. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Friday. Thank you.